anything that they would like to see. We walked around, and discussed concerns, issues, current things that we do for safety, and then other items were what we would like to see happen. We ended meeting one with 6 different strategies to assist with safety and security of our school, and this was one of them. And like I had told the committee, we're simply putting together strategies, recommendations, but I didn't want to move further on this one until we talked to the city council about the feasibility of it. So I created a map, just briefly, just so that you can see sort of what I had discussed. I had met with Banks just because it's good to try to get some information up front, because he actually brought up some great things that I didn't even think about. This being his wheelhouse, essentially you can see in the purple, essentially it looks like the main entrance to the high school. In this committee, we talked about a relocation plan. So we have an 83-page multi-hazard emergency plan, but within that plan, it doesn't get down to the level of detail as to, in the actual emergency, what's going to take place. I know observations from our administrators now have been that kids move between the high school main building and the ag and band hall building multiple periods throughout the day, and there's been issues and things brought up about, hey, the kids walk right out in the street. Yes, we have crosswalks and stuff like that, but the issue was, well, if we had a true emergency, could we move a large group of kids from one building? If we had to evacuate this entire high school, in our plan, we would have buses a block back. We would have kids flow through that ag shop, load on buses to relocate if there were a true emergency. And our worry is that if we had gates there, and essentially it would only be blocked during school hours, and otherwise traffic would be wide open. Banks had brought up some good perspectives on, hey, does it keep access to any residences? Well, my first thought process, we talked about it going past Salmon Street, and it was like, well, yeah, that's going to impede on some residents. So ending our conversation, we had talked about just this component where they navigate between the high school building, the ag shop, and the band hall, but largely in part of the ability to, when we're moving mass amounts of kids in a true emergency, this would allow for safe crossing, so on and so forth. Now, materials and labor and all of that stuff, I feel is something that the district would pick up. In fact, we would probably have our ag students, we just purchased a plasma table, and they also do welding as well. And so it would be a fabrication project done by our ag students. But I would like to see if it's feasible. I'm pretty flexible in regard to how I anticipate if this were to be, come to fruition. I would anticipate school starts at 8, so they would be wide open until say 8:05, 8:10, and then they would remain locked until our first bus comes through for pickup for our handicap route or our special needs route, which is typically about 3:05, 3:10. We have the bus sitting there waiting for pickup. So I'd anticipate that it would be locked between about 8:05 to about 3:10. Outside of that, it would be wide open. The goal is not to impede traffic constantly. The whole game plan would be is prior to school and right after school, when I think might be the heaviest traffic moments, they will be open for vehicles to pass. That was so students, we could have people on duty after school truly monitoring that area, knowing that that's the one time during the day that kids would have to pass without secure passageways. By the Salmon Street, we had discussed it'd have to probably be a rolling gate of some kind, maybe adhered to, there's already a foundation of concrete, sidewalk, could be a rolling style gate. Over here by the high school, it could be either or. I think it could be one that rolls into the vacant lot there. We could probably get it to where it rolls over there, but I know with drainage issues and concerns, the other option would be that it swing around on a wheel, because this is a fire lane closest to the school. Either method would probably be effective, but I'm pretty flexible in regards to what it needs to look like, sound like, and even flexible in regards to certain times. If y'all had any recommendations or anything like that. But we definitely didn't want to start trying to build or try to barricade streets without involving the city and getting the blessing from City Council. So I was going to answer the questions if there are any.
Mr. Mayor. May I speak?
Okay.
In our initial context of conversation and visiting with Marshall Stewart and such as that, it was like in evacuation of the kids at hand and such as that, moving across the street and such as that. It was brought forth that, of course, in the older discussion was discussion of closing 6th Street from Sample to school or up to the tennis courts. In our initial conversation, I go, it's all good, work the principle, whatever, but I have 4 residences that live from School Street or Simon Street to School Street that they need 24-hour access to their residence and not be able to. So after, with the task at hand, intended to the different things of nature that would be in an emergency to be able to take care of the situation which Mr. Fuller has in his hand, that's where we had these discussions about what we could and what we couldn't do before we make a presentation to the council.
I'm all for the plan, don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to figure out what Little Ray would do. Main thing we need to do is make sure that somehow or another these, you talking about a fence, and I'm thinking like.
No, we're talking about a security fence. In other words, basically, as the drawing in discussion on the north end at the entrance of the high school, there, as you go up Dameron Street.
Right, but what I'm saying is it gonna be something like, I mean, are we just trying to block traffic?
Correct. We're gonna stop traffic.
Okay.
Between periods of time of the day.
Right, and when I hear him talk, he talks like a fence, and I'm asking, is it gonna be like a cattle guard? Fence where it's the 2 pipe and pipe going this way, where you can swing it and close it?
This one basically in discussion, from hearing this discussion, is it would have 2 anchors on one end. It'd have a pipe that went across the street to another pipe that it would chain to or bar to be able to barricade the street off with street closed. The signage on it that says street closed, and it'd have hours of the day it'd be closed. One of the suggestions that I made to him on the south end over here on Simon Street is there's enough area between the alleyway at the cafetorium and the area here at the sidewalk portion or whatever. It would be ample that he could run rolling gates like we put at the city park where they roll on rollers, and it would basically be 24 inches or as such, and it wouldn't have any chain link. It would just be piping structure once again to where they would, both of them would roll together. They would adhere to one another versus chain or some type of latch. They would also have signage on them that road closed between these periods of time of the day.
And that's fine with me. My biggest concern is I wasn't the best child in school, but after hours, how do we keep little Ray from taking that gate and closing it at midnight? Where somebody's coming down that road and little Ray has closed that thing and somebody hits it. That's my concern. You see what I'm getting at?
I think in the design of it, I mean, because it'll be locked throughout the day, so someone just can't. We could design something to where it locks shut and can't be opened without unlocking.
That's what I'm getting. I want to make sure that Ray can't at midnight can't go and get that and say, hey, let me show him the trick, and open it and close that
you'd have to put your dead man's back into where whomever's in charge of opening and closing the gate, that they make sure that they dead man, or secure it,
Right.
whether it lock it, whatever, open at that period of time. Now, there's always gonna be that risk of somebody's bolt cutter, saw, whatever.
Well, I mean, most people don't have that, but just,
Mischief is gonna be mischief.
yeah, that's right, and then,
I'm not really against the idea, but I'm just wondering what kind of pushback you might get, if anything, from,
You're gonna have
as
plenty
far
of
as
potential.
impeding the free flow of traffic.
You have, that's the main thoroughfare through the city, and we had those discussions.
Yeah.
But in the discussions between Mr. Fuller and myself, as we're standing on location or whatever, he has a duty to protect the children of our community or whatever, and it was brought forth of, when you put all the aspects that, from my office and yours, about making that there's availability to the rights of way.
I can tell you that, certainly I understand that, that's certainly, a consideration. I can tell you what we do at the school that I work at. In the high traffic areas, the high danger areas, if you want to call them that, we have crossing guards, we have kids working, we always have an adult working in the high traffic areas before school, leading up to right after the first bell.
Right.
And then in the afternoon, we do the same thing. To supervise those specific areas of high traffic and I call them high danger areas,
Right.
you know, for the kids' protection.
the only thing here is, and I'm all for it, because I can tell you right now, that will keep, I heard this before, but sometimes, like seniors, last couple of days at school, they'll spin out, go around the school, and it keeps people from flying down this road when you've got kids coming out of the high school, going to the band hall, because they're constantly going back and forth here. I've seen them do that between the band hall and there, and going back from the lunchroom, and during the school hours. That would make it safe for those children, because, buses, to me, it's a good deal as long as we can figure out how to secure that, so that somebody.
Definitely. And I think there's a little bit of flexibility in regards to the time, and what I mean by that is, school starts at 8, but by technicality, if the kids are already in first period, we wouldn't technically need to shut or lock those gates until the end of first period, which would buy us till about 8:45 if we had to. And I say that because they're already going to be open when school starts. So whether we close them at 8:05 or 8:45, really the goal would be to be able to lock them by the first passing period, which was when kids would be going back and forth. Same thing with opening them. I think as soon as 8th period, which is the last period we have, begins, if they're going to be open by 3:10 anyways, we could even open them right after the passing period for 8th period. It might give back some freedom of drive time of about an hour.
What time would that be?
I have to, yeah, back in about 2:45. It might give the public a little bit more time on them being unlocked and ease of access. I think what really the lens we were looking at as a committee was, with all the events in the environment that we're in, with school shootings and other things that require an entire district to shut down or lock down, part of our committee discussion is, we're a small enough community that if there's a threat at the high school, it's also going to be considered a threat at the junior high and at the elementary too.
Right.
So we've taken the stance that if one building locks down, the entire district is going to lock down. And if we have to start evacuating and moving large amounts of kids, that's where this is truly a benefit, because this will be our path of exit in a mass evacuation situation.
Pardon my ignorance, but at lunchtime, y'all don't have an open campus, do you? How many vehicles do you have?
Seniors only have open campus.
Uh-huh.
But in this plan here, there's a handful of these parking spaces near the band hall. And right now, the majority of these are faculty. There are a few students, but essentially, we would ensure that the students needing to leave would be outside of this area. But right now, the way, as it lies now, is our seniors are the only people that are allowed off campus at lunch.
And teachers?
Teachers come and go as well. Teachers also have a key. I would probably do something like a padlock that requires I call them a falcon key, but you know, they're keys that can't be remade, but they would have accessibility. Like if they could get into a building, they'd be able to undo this lock or this padlock that would be locking this gate. We would try to base it that way. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, you know, other padlocks are, people get if one key gets out there, they get redistributed and recut and made, and next thing you know, everybody has access. So, but that being said, we would try to ensure that this handful of parking spaces wouldn't be impeded by.
So you don't anticipate any problems at lunchtime then?
We would design it to where there's not.
Yeah. I can see, and again, I'm not against this idea, but I can see, you know, a lot of pushback from others. And, you know, I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, from my office, as a response to them, as a responsibility in partnership with the ISD, in our open discussion as we're having right now, it was the first line of defense in providing safety for the kids. That's the best case scenario because, as Mr. Fuller's made, they've had a committee to come up with different aspects of how to take care of the problems which they feel might come into hand in a certain situation. And the committee sat around and discussed that they felt in being able to take care of the children and young adults at hand and trying to administer a speedy or an expeditious manner in evacuation, that this is a matter that needs to be taken care of.
It has to be addressed. Are there any other solutions that you came up with? Any other possibilities that you're looking at?
Right. There's definitely other strategies that we're trying to utilize, but that would be more for, you know, hardening the campuses to where people can't gain access as easily. Right. But in reference, due to our district being spread out and across streets, I don't know that there's another feasible solution for this. Because I think no matter where we did the relocation point, yes, it's going to require we either cross 6th Street or another street in some other manner. But I do know that the governor had just released yesterday a 44-page document that his task force for safety and security came up with.
Yeah, I know what you're going to say.
And it aligns exactly to this, to where law enforcement could have a huge benefit. And I mean, if we think about Sutherland Springs, I mean, one of the largest issues that law enforcement had to deal with was how do we flow traffic in a way that's not going to impede the need to do something. And I think this here would be a huge benefit for law enforcement in the event of a true emergency, just being able to redirect traffic. And
well, I know one of the things they want schools to look at is a single entrance to the main building.
Correct.
That's what I'm hearing now.
Correct. And if there's a single building, that makes it much easier. I know having spread out buildings, what strategies we've been discussing includes access control, where our staff IDs would actually be what gets us in. Because right now, our main entrance is open. I mean, people come straight to the secretary to come check in. And what we're looking at is doing it to where the exterior doors actually lock. And there's a camera system that actually they check in through this camera system. Once they've been vetted that they belong at the school and that they are allowed to be there, then they get buzzed in. And so they wouldn't even gain access to the building at all.
And everyone's required to wear IDs, I assume.
Faculty, yes. Students, not at this time. But it is something that we've been debating on implementing. The hardest part is day-to-day interactions and forcing, you know, if you expect them to wear them, then we need to hold them accountable, right? Because what gets monitored gets done. But for our faculty, if that were the key into the building, it would definitely be something they'd have to get into the building. So, but there's 6 different items. One of them actually is, the next thing I wanted to mention was we're looking at adding it's a combined position of school resource officer paired with career and technology. We're looking at I've talked to the school board about incorporating more real world scenarios for us. such as law enforcement, criminal investigations, law enforcement 2. There's a whole slew of law enforcement style classes that this one person could act as an SRO, a school resource officer, and also teach law enforcement courses to our high school students. And so we literally have found a way to incorporate that as early as next year. And so I'm literally at the cusp. We asked our juniors and seniors who were interested, and as soon as I can validate the classes will make, I'll be posting the position and hiring it this summer. The thing that comes along with that is, I was talking to Marshall Stewart in regards to whenever you have a peace officer, they have to be commissioned under somebody. And the 2 options that we have, or 3 options I should say, is that we either have the person be commissioned so that they have some jurisdiction either under Wilson County, or I think that it could be a huge benefit to support City Marshal Stewart, and there's no cost association for the city. It's just that he would be commissioned possibly in one of the options under the city marshal. At that time, he could do extra duty and assist the city if it were need to happen. We could do an agreement in terms of in a true emergency. He could be relieved of duty to come and support. There's a whole slew of options that exist. My only concern, the 3rd option, was that the school district commissioned the peace officer, but we're really not in the market or business of being a peace officer or providing them the appropriate training and all that they need. So the game plan would be is for him to have jurisdiction, him or her have jurisdiction, and possibly be commissioned under the city marshal. That's another thing that I wanted to bring to topic.
I know that, I think it was this past week, I think in the same week, Lavernia had threats, you guys had threats one day, and we had threats at our school as well. And I think it was all in the same week. I think it was last week. And it was crazy. We had so many policemen on campus, around campus. It was crazy. I couldn't believe there were so many police there.
Ours happened to be the day before field day. And so Wilson County sheriffs were there. We had the city marshal around. All it takes, and it ended up being a non-credible posting on Instagram or wherever. I mean, FBI was in Lavernia. Tracking this down. They actually tracked it down to, I believe it was an out-of-nation source, but it's something that simple that gets passed from one account to another, and they just start tagging the local name of whatever. So if it's Stockdale, Texas, they're going to say, I'm going to go to the school in Stockdale, I'm going to go to the school in such and such county, or I'm going to go to the school and it literally gets everybody heightened.
Well, I saw later that our threat was considered a non-credible threat, but I actually saw the picture of the guy in the threats online, and it looked pretty credible to me.
Right.
But it was later stated that it was non-credible.
Right. Well, they're finding that people are making fake pages, posting stuff that is not even from inside the state of Texas, or in some cases, not even in the U.S. And it's just people that have that much time on their hands, I don't really understand it. But I think the hardest thing for us, my game plan for an SRO would be that they be available at the beginning and the end of the day, where they're serving as a school resource officer, so that during those moments of concern, they are visible, vigilant, and seen on a daily basis, rather than, Mr. Stewart has been a godsend to our district, because I've literally been able to just call him and say, please, can you make a presence in the morning? And we had a situation where we had somebody walking around the district with a baseball bat, and so literally I'm leaving my office, calling it into the sheriff's department, and it took 22 minutes to get there. Luckily, they were not aggressive. I was able to keep proximity with them, and literally we ended up walking the whole city of Stockdale until he rested at a certain home, and they were able to follow up, make contact, and let them know that, hey, you can't be walking around a school with a baseball bat where kids are passing from one building to another. It gets everybody on heightened concern, locking down buildings, because everything is in the benefit and safety of the kids. And so those are the 2 topics. This one I know is one, but the times, like I said, if we need to try to constrict it to where it's really only locked up during, like, I think it says 8:45 and 2:45, that might help a little bit with the passing. I believe they're able to make a single block, right? And
Correct.
what is it, sample? Is it sample?
Sample 7 solid.
Right.
Yeah, but it all depends on what what kind of day they have.
I think for the good of the kids, it's a good idea. I really do. I mean, I've driven through there and there's a lot of kids coming and going at all times. And when they do let out, it's like a herd of them coming out of the band hall and out of the ag stuff. And then another herd coming in. And, you know, I mean, just, we can protect the